to this hearing on Office of Accountability, Performance, and Innovation, formerly the I-Team, or maybe presently the I-Team. I'm not sure when it officially changes. My name is Councilor Rudd, and we have First District Councilor Carney, at-large Councilor Michael Green, Fifth District Councilor Joe Driscoll, who is hopefully going to speak in a New Zealand accent for the entire meeting, Councilor at-large Steve Thompson, and Council President Helen Hudson. Adria, would you introduce yourself, anybody who you brought with you, and a little bit about your department and any changes?
Sure.
Or noteworthy things?
Yep, yeah. My name is Adria Finch. I'm the director of the Office of Accountability, Performance, and Innovation. We're formerly the Office of Innovation. I'm here with Sam Edelstein, our Chief Data Officer, and we wanted to just start out by kind of briefing you about some of the changes that are happening in our office. In addition to the name change, there's a little bit of a change in philosophy as well. So for those of you who don't know, we were funded by a grant from Bloomberg Philanthropies in 2015. It was a $1.35 million grant that we've been spending down. It was supposed to be a 3-year grant. We did not successfully spend all of our money, so we were given a 1-year grant extension to try to spend down that balance. With that, with the change of administration, we have also been kind of taking a different approach to our work. So with the Bloomberg, on this handout that I gave you, we can get down to this but a little bit later, but we will be trying to spend down in calendar year 2018 about $500,000. That's going to be a tough challenge for us to do, but in doing that, we are going to be expanding our office a little bit and filling some vacancies, and one of those will be funded for the rest of the year. But I'm going to let Sam talk about kind of the philosophy and the changes that are happening in our office. That's this little triangle at the top.
Yeah, so the triangle at the top, we have innovation, accountability, and performance all as the corners of the triangle, with data in the middle. So we see data sort of driving all of the work that we do. So if we start, just for instance, with performance, we're concerned about how the city does all of its work and making sure that we're meeting metrics that the mayor has laid out and that we've worked with the mayor to define. And so when we see things going well or that need improvement, we can pass those things to think about how do we do them better. And so the innovation wing of the office might look at how do we pilot some different things to make it work better. Once we've seen that those things are working well through a pilot, then we'll want to actually institute them and make sure that they're happening all the time. And so an accountability wing would then take that on and make sure that everybody can do what they do on a day-to-day basis. And then we would pass that back to a performance office to be able to measure and make sure that everything's going well, see where we can make more improvements over and over and over again. So we see this as sort of a life cycle to improve services that the city is delivering on a day-to-day basis.
So right now we're staffed with Sam, myself, and then Samantha Lynette. So there's 3 of us full-time, plus Janelle Robinson works about 1 day a week with us. And we have a vacancy in the analytics coordinator position. So in this table, it's under the innovation employees. That's funded by Bloomberg through the rest of the calendar year, so through the end of 2018. And then the other changes to our office, if this budget passes, we'll be bringing on another data analyst to help with the data portion of our work. Not necessarily in the innovation wing, but they'll kind of work across the department. They will not be funded by the grant. And then the other change is that we will be having a chief accountability officer who is already staffed with the city and funded. And so just to go over some of the grant information with you, if you look at the information at the bottom of this page, we are starting to transition staff off the grant. So Sam and Samantha are funded on the grant through the end of this current fiscal year, so through the end of June. They will be funded. They cannot be funded by the grant moving forward starting in July, so they're completely on the budget going forward. I'm already on the budget, and actually Sam is mostly on the SURA budget already also. 2/3 of his salary is covered by SURA and 1/3 of his salary is currently covered by the grant. So they will be transitioned off the grant. And so the biggest changes, if you flip this top page over, again, once we transition off the grant, we're being funded by SURA. This is just a summary of fiscal year 2018 and fiscal year 2019, the SURA expenses that are a result of our department. In addition to that, we did just give you, in case you're not familiar with us, a highlight
so for
of the work. Yep.
Sorry to interrupt. For the FY19 budget, you're more than 50% funded by the city at this point. So it's like 600.
Yeah, we only have the one person, the analytics coordinator, for half of the year will be funded by the grant.
And then we're going to push the rest of the, what, $300,000 under SURA.
Yes. Programmatically, you have the information about some of the work that we've done that's attached. This is what we call our I-Team CV that just highlights all the projects that we've worked on. We'll be happy to answer questions about those if you have any. Other than that, we, again, are trying to spend down our grant dollars. So some of these expenses, if you look here, are higher than normal. In the professional services line, that's us, plus we're trying to see if we can maybe find some contractors to help us in the city with some work. We have travel grant dollars that we're still trying to spend down. Operating expenses and office supplies, we are able to make some technology purchases. When we host or convene public meetings, we're able to get snacks for that for the time being still. So really, a lot of the expenses that you see here are in us trying to spend $500,000, which is harder than you would think.
So what are the kind of restrictions of the spending on the grant? Is it heavily restricted, I'd imagine?
Yeah, so we're not actually allowed to use the money for implementation of anything. It's to build our innovation capacity. So to help us do our innovative work, we can hire a consultant to help come in and, conduct brainstorming activities or to go out and do public engagement. We can spend the money. We just bought the furniture for the iLab downstairs because we're going to be using that room for trainings, innovation trainings moving forward, but it cannot be to actually implement anything. It's just kind of supporting services.
So the big increases to professional services and supplies, we're seeing those big increases because they're reimbursable?
Yeah.
Okay. The other question that I had was the measurements metrics created. There's obviously a big increase. Is that simply just because a lot of these programs that are in progress will be actually completed and we'll have numbers and see something from them?
Well, as part of our innovation work from the get-go, the Bloomberg philosophy is that we have to do these meetings called stock takes. And so for every initiative that we create under the Bloomberg philosophy, we have metrics that we have to set, and then we have recurring meetings with stakeholders to make sure that we're moving towards those. And so it's just something that's embedded into our culture. We have them on an internal dashboard that we use to monitor things with, but our hope is that those will eventually be made public. And then additionally, we've been working closely with the mayor's office to develop the performance office that Sam had spoken about earlier. And initially, it's being driven by the mayor's OKRs, or the objectives and key results that he presented in his budget hearing. There were 4 objectives. And so we've even started to establish those metrics that we want to track those. There are 8 that we've started with. And then we're continuing to work with departments to develop metrics to track performance as well. So this is just going to be something that's embedded in our work moving forward. I think we probably have, with infrastructure alone, we have probably 30 or 35 that we track. And so,
yeah, I guess my question is it's 120 more than years past. I guess I'm still a little confused as to
what is a metric?
Yeah, where are we at with it? How why is it that we're all of a sudden we've got so much more? Is it what were we doing in the past or not doing in the past that now you know, we're setting to.
Yeah, well, I can't speak too much of, going too far in the past. I've only been here 3 years, and so we came in with this new philosophy. But to my understanding, and Sam, help me if you think I'm going off in the wrong direction, but a lot of times people just did the work, and maybe they were tracking things, but they were tracking it internally. And so, for example, DPW obviously was always tracking how many roads or how many miles of road that they were paving. But they were just thinking about that internally. Now we're asking for that. We're tracking that, but we're combining it with other information about where it's being done or where other departments doing work. So then hopefully we can have some cross collaboration and utilize that information. So to get to your question, I don't think it was being done as extensively or as formally as we are doing it now.
So basically what you're saying is you're going to be sort of centralizing numbers now, where everyone that you've sort of got your finger on the pulse of, a lot of it you're going to be tracking internally yourselves rather than allowing the department to sort of do it.
Well, they can certainly track it as well, but
but
we're actually holding people
so that you can use it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's part of the accountability wing that we're adopting too. Okay. So we've had these stock takes that, they've been great. I don't think necessarily we'd have the stock takes. We would review the metrics, and then we'd say, okay, this one isn't quite where we'd want it. Where do we go from here? And so now, actually, by having this accountability wing associated with our office, it's almost an extra person that can help follow through and push and make sure that we're actually making the change that we want to see.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I think it's better that, you guys are the ones actually sort of tracking it, because if you're ultimately going to come down and tell us how we can be more efficient, you probably should be, getting the numbers yourself and being able to look at it and use it in a manner and some layout that functions well for you.
And I think, Sam, do you want to talk about maybe some of the data queues stuff?
Yeah, so as a part of that, we have an open data portal where we publish data to publicly available that the city creates and collects. And so as part of that, we will publish these performance metrics as well, so that you all have access to them, although you would anyway, but also the public can track it as well.
What type of broad stroke stuff would be available through data queues?
Currently we have things like how many potholes have been filled. We have the proposed budget online, previous budgets as well. Going forward, if there were a metric about how quickly do we fill potholes, we would have numbers that would say how quickly did we fill a pothole. Did we fill potholes week by week or something like that, depending on exactly what the metric would say.
I had heard there was some discussion about the GPS of the snow plows going into data queues. Is that still a plan?
So we put some of that data up for a hackathon that we did in January. One of the first questions that we had asked actually when we made the data public last year was, would we put GPS data up there? It's a lot, so I was a little bit skeptical about how much people would actually use it. And generally when we're putting data online, we want people to use it. We just don't want it there just to have it. So this was an attempt to just see if people would do it. Now the pothole data that we put up there actually comes from the GPS units. We pull it from there, and through a bunch of details that you probably don't care about, we can show where potholes have been filled sort of in an automated fashion. Going forward, there may be other things that we wanted to do, showing which streets have been plowed, those kind of things. We sort of have to figure out exactly how we do it and what's productive, but sure, that could be a possibility.
Before it becomes an all-out committee hearing, could we I have a couple more budget questions. So in particular, because you're so new, and I think it changes from year to year, the volatility in your spending, what would be your desired steady state, and how quickly do you imagine getting there? And then how will you prioritize what areas to focus on? And how will you manage expectations? Because it seems like you're often cited as a solution by all, and yet you're 3 people.
Well, hopefully more.
Hopefully more, but again, you're basically 3 people.
Yeah. So in terms of steady state, to get to your first question, I think, once the grant runs up, if we are able to be staffed at what we're proposing to you now, that's between $385,000 and $400,000 for salaries. Then ideally, and this could be debate, but we would like to keep around $15,000 in our budget for travel. And then we'll be needing office supplies and operating expenses. That would be a few $1,000s. And then, let's see, we have cell phones. So I would say it would be a little bit over $400,000 moving forward. So come next budget cycle. And then your next question was about how do we want to make our office function with a lot of work? So we've actually been thinking about
just before you go there. Sorry, for the FY19, it's about 350,000 that is city funded. So we would need to find at least another 50,000 in order to be at the.
We think so.
If we spend all the Bloomberg money and if we can't carry it forward.
Yes.
Okay.
We do have calculations that I didn't bring with us, but we have been able to show that we raise or save the city a lot more than we cost. So we'll be happy to save that. And then actually, to get to your second question about kind of programmatically, how are we going to function? If you look at the first page that has the table, or the triangle and that has a table, we're still kind of working out the logistics of what programs we're going to be rolling out. But under innovation, data, and accountability, it lists some programs that we are going to be focusing on. And I can talk a little bit about how these are going to integrate. So right now, the Bloomberg model is that we have a very public, outward-facing challenge, and that we develop new programs to start to address that challenge. This year, we're focusing on housing stability. Moving forward, once the grant is up, we will have some flexibility about how the innovation branch of our office spends its time. And so we've been talking a lot about this concept of internal innovation, where we think that there's plenty of room for improvement in existing city operations. And so we are starting in June going to be hosting, and actually we had our first one a couple weeks ago, an innovation academy where we are going to be actually training city employees to identify waste or inefficiencies in their work, and then working with them to identify solutions for that. And these solutions don't have to be high tech. It could be as simple as reorganize your working space, or move the computer from point A to point B, or develop a checklist. But our whole philosophy is bring people through these trainings in terms of innovation, and then we can follow up with them and work with them to make improvements to their existing work. So that's kind of the internal innovation and the innovation capacity. And then also, this is easier said than done, but we're going to be focusing on trying to institute a cultural change as well. I think too often we see people who are just okay with the status quo, and when we say, why do we do something this way? They say, well, because it's always been done that way. And sometimes that's a silly answer. And so we want to start to let people know that it's okay to change something if you don't think it's working. We want to empower you to innovate on your own. And so I think there's a couple ways we can do that. One is by we're calling it storytelling, but making sure that people feel recognized and feel proud of doing good work or making improvements to their work. And it might seem like it's not that big of a deal, but from what we've seen in other cities, it's really made a big difference. And then the other thing that we've been seeing, especially with the change of administration, is a lot of people have been coming to us and saying, I have this great idea, you guys should do it, you guys should do it. And unfortunately, we're kind of strapped for time. And so is there a pitch contest or a way for people to come and share their ideas and then us actually do it? Because there's a lot of people who are filling potholes or digging holes in the ground who have great ideas but have never had the opportunity to present them. And so can we start to institute that type of cultural change as well? I'll let Sam talk about some of the data work and the accountability programs that are listed here.
Sure. So continuing the expansion of the open data portal, putting data out there that people are interested in and want to see how the government does its work. similar to what Adria was talking about with an Innovation Academy, also doing data trainings for internal staff so that everybody knows how to do things like use Excel, know how to read dashboards, things like that, which I think can just help to get a more data informed culture within the city. We have a lot of issues with just the existing data systems that we have. They need to be cleaned up, and we need to have consistency around, like, how do we talk about an address in a city? So how do we make sure that 233 East Washington Street is called 233 East Washington Street across all of our systems? It's easier said than done for sure, and it seems really silly and kind of basic, but it's important because if we want to be able to tell how many code violations and how many fires and how many et cetera, have happened at one place, those naming conventions need to be similar. So some focus on things like that. And then also just being able to present all that data both internally and externally in a way that people can receive it so that we don't require them to read through a spreadsheet or a table. They can see it in graphs and charts and things like that. So doing things like that, and then also finishing out this setting of metrics so that we can be accountable towards specific things that the city is working towards, and then be able to measure all of it generally. So those are all things that take a lot of process and a lot of definition and talking to different departments and staff so that we know exactly what to measure. But once we get there, I think that then we're able to really put together a good workflow to make everything work a lot more efficiently.
And so to get back to your question, I think the first thing that we want to do because of capacity issues is we don't want to be the implementers. We don't want to be the people that are coming in and telling you this is how you need to do your job. We want to be the coaches. We want to give people the skill set so that they can make improvements on their own, and we want to hold their hand and guide them through that process and track and monitor and say, hey, how's this going? Let's look at these numbers. Do you need help with something? But I think in order for us to be truly effective moving forward, I think this is an important shift that we're going to need to make. I think if you look back on, we'll take our infrastructure work, for example. I think we had a lot of great initiatives. I think to some degree, we weren't always good at working with the people who are doing the work. Sometimes we would come in and say, this is a great idea, let's just go and do it. And so I think we really need to make sure that we're partnering with these departments moving forward. And so this is a lesson that we've learned and we're trying to apply and innovate on our own work as we move forward. And then the second kind of functionality or how we're going to make this work is, again, looking at this triangle. And I think in our office, you know, we've had this innovation wing and this data wing, and we've really been able to play off one another and help advance projects. But I think this accountability part is the key thing that we're missing, because sometimes we do create these programs or we work with people to develop something, and then we don't have time to, for lack of a better term, like sit back and babysit it and make sure that it's moving and advancing forward. But if we have a person or a team that's dedicated to saying, oh, hey, how's this going? Let me help you with that. And if something's not working well, kick it over to the innovation wing, or like call up the data wing and say, hey, I need these numbers. Can you help me run these numbers so I can think about this better? I think really this trifecta is going to help our operations a lot.
Other questions?
For the performance management portion of it, is there a good benchmark from like a different city that have done this, and what are like the key attributes of that?
Yeah, so we were actually just in Pittsburgh last week meeting with their performance team. And I think what we've really seen is that we've looked at a bunch of different cities, and I think it's going to have to be unique to Syracuse, but there are a couple different approaches. There's one approach that we saw in Cincinnati that at first when we saw it, we're like, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. This is exactly what we need. But it was departments going in front of it. They have a city manager system, so it was a city manager, budget director, law department of just a bunch of higher level staffers, and they were given one thing that they were supposed to fix. When we went, the city manager was really interested in customer service, so every department was going in and talking about their customer service. But the departments were scared of these meetings. It was not something they looked forward to. They went in and they reported on their numbers, and again, first time we went, we were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, we want it here. But I think we've gone and seen some other offices where it's a lot more collaborative. It's not a punitive system. It's more, how do we work together to do this? And so we're still kind of figuring it out. I set the mayoral objectives and key results. We're starting there. But we also want, if you look under here, under the accountability programs, there's the mayoral performance, but then we also want grassroots performance too. So when people come up with these ideas or they want to make these changes, we want to follow up with them and make sure that they're continuing to make improvements. And so by tracking both those high level priorities and these grassroots priorities, we're hoping to kind of meet in the middle somewhere. And so the format is that we will, for the mayoral OKRs, there will be quarterly meetings that will be led. The mayor will be there, as well as at least one senior staff member. And then the appropriate people for each key result will also be in the room, and we'll be discussing it. So, for example, one of the objectives of the mayor was to deliver city services effectively, efficiently, and equitably. So right now we're working with, lots of people touch this. We're starting out with DPW, water, and codes. And we're saying, okay, what are some of the things that you do that relate back to this objective? And so one thing is that, are we responding to service requests in a timely manner? And so we're starting to work with each one of those, and we have set, I don't remember what the exact key result, what the exact goal is, but we've set these goals and these targets, and we are going to be meeting quarterly to make sure that we are moving forward towards the appropriate targets to help the mayor reach his objective of improving city services. And we're still kind of formulating how like the grassroots performance will work, but all of this data will be made public, not only on data queues, but we could potentially put up a monitor in City Hall that's actually showing how we're making progress towards this. And so we want the public to be engaged. We want to be held accountable.
The public, if you put the monitor in City Hall, the most public don't come in City Hall.
That's a good point.
So, but I think like fundamentally it sounds like it's closer to like almost project management, where it's like, here are these initiatives we want to do and we're going to hold people accountable until we achieve that, versus a different approach, which would kind of be like, here's what a successful DPW looks like on these, whatever 20 metrics, and on an ongoing basis, we're going to make sure that they're doing those things. Is it right that it's more project management based?
No, I think what the second piece that you said, it may be pieces of both, but these key objectives we would update regularly. So if we're consistently meeting the numbers, I don't think that we'll say like, great, green light, we win, right, we're great now. I think we would say, are there ways that we can challenge it more? So maybe at first we say, it takes this many days to fulfill this kind of request. Ultimately, we may be able to do it faster, or there may be something else, or whatever. And so I think that we would want to update those things to figure out just how do we do it better. And so sometimes it may then be that there needs to be some project management that would come in through the innovation wing that would sort of say, how can we apply like a lean process to this or something. But we would always strive to just improve where we can.
I have one concern that I'd like to express just based on your answers and based on the experience with other departments in this. For instance, like some of the finance mechanisms and some of the research capacities that we've like distributed probably too broadly, and it results in these like individualized, unique systems within each department, and a lack of like flexibility and commonality. And so your approach to be kind of like a coach or to pick individual departments and build solutions, like and it seems like we kind of regret the decentralized nature of some of these things, and we would like to have them where we have a more uniform approach and we can build specialty. And I think of you guys as experts, so more than coaches, like experts who will build something. So just the idea of having something that's like a GPS orientation where like you can tag, like a citizen can tag something and say, whether the first time you do it is for a pothole or whether the first time you do it is for a property with code complaints, it seems like the structure should be such that it will fit for everyone, like the other departments will be able to use it. So I would just, and you're probably thinking of those things anyways, but I do think there's a tension between this idea of like, oh, the solution lays with the department versus we're coming in with a solution. And I'm sure that Bloomberg Philanthropies offers you insight into what has worked and gone wrong in other places. But I think of you as the experts who definitely have to.
We're not afraid to offer up solutions, but we want to make sure that we want to get people on board. We don't want to come in and just say this is the solution. So whether that's having meetings and looking at options with people and making sure that we're picking the solution that fits right, I think that's the important thing. And we like to think of each other like we're the internal consultants of the city. So and we like to work across departments. I think all of you probably realize that to some degree many of the departments are very siloed, and so how can we start to break down that barrier as well?
Can I jump in quickly? I just want to ask you, you said you talked about some of the outcomes. My concern is because I was looking through here and I saw you had the micro paving, and I know you guys were on that. So what outcome did you end up coming out with the micro paving?
Well, I will first say that I disagreed with former commissioner's assessment of the program, of the micro paving program. I think we saw the exact results that we wanted to see. And actually when we brought in some folks to go and look at the application to tell us, was this a complete failure? What do you think? They said, no, you can see the old cracks, but they're all filled now. And so we asked, after last year when I think you said, okay, you have one more year to try this out, we asked DPW to go out and take pictures of all the roads before they were micropaved. We asked them to, and rate them, take pictures and rate them after they were micropaved but before the winter. And then we actually haven't followed up with them this spring because spring hasn't really been here that long to go and see how they survived the winter. But our plan is to review those road ratings and look at the pictures from both 2 years ago and last year, and make a recommendation to them about how they want to move forward. But in our opinion, at least after last winter, it was a success.
Okay. So please keep us updated on that because we're going back around to that, and before we make that decision, we need to know what the outcomes were with that.
We can certainly give you a presentation about those road ratings, and we can even drive them if you guys want.
And one quickie, because I know we're winding down, I just want to, this is just a little side note, that when you start looking at bringing in on more staff, I like to see a little more diversity.
Yeah, we reached out to the Stand, and we reached out to Q's Culture.
And that's fine. That's fine, but we have refugees, we have Hispanics, we have a whole Asians, we have a huge diverse population that I'd like to see us encompass.
Yeah.
Maybe a last thought, but in terms of, I liked your work sort of internal consultants, and in terms of your the end budget and the sustainable budget, I would love if you were almost allocating your hours the way consultants do. So it's like, oh, our staff of X has Y hours a year, which we could allocate this way, which in theory could be assigned to a department. And it could even be like there could be rotations within the year or rotations from year to year. And I think that would help hold you all accountable for like, oh, this year we're focusing on codes and we'll have a plug-in system that will then relate to parks next year. But there's like a plan, and I would very much encourage you to continue to think of yourselves as consultants, but promote yourself financially that way too, if possible.
Okay.
And I think we got to wrap up. So thank you.
Thanks, Councilor.
And the budget office is up next. Mary.
Yeah, I gotta stay on this one.
Management and budget. It'll probably be quick because they're the budget people and they'll have this all under control. So I'd like to welcome Councilor Green, Councilor Driscoll, Councilor Thompson, and I'm Councilor Rudd. Mary Vossler, would you talk a little bit about your budget and what you do?
I know you guys know exactly what I do because we've been sitting, this is our second week through budget hearings. So The Office of Management Budget also includes the Division of Purchase. I just want to make that clear before I start. The Budget Department prepares and monitors the city's annual budget, which we're doing right now. It works on the 6-year capital improvement plan, which is published in December. It works on prepares the 5-year multi-year financial plan, which is done in the summertime. We also assist the personnel department rather heavily this time of year because they are in contract negotiations, and any sort of financial impact on the contracts, he works with the budget analysts to determine what the dollar value is as we go forward. We also work with personnel on all the health and dental plans and the workers' compensation, and I also do the risk management on the property insurance for the city. On the purchase side, in 2011, the purchase department was merged with the Onondaga County Department of Purchase. They handle the majority of our purchasing of commodities and services. The city still issues their own bids for construction work, any public bids, roads, sewers, water lines, things like that. We also do all the bidding for the JSCB projects. We do our request for qualifications, the request for proposals. There's still, that office is still very active on a day-to-day basis. On the financial side, my department is people and pens and a copier. You'll see that there's 7 people that have been allocated to my department. I need to let you know that really 3 of those are positions that we have, but there's no money behind them. I have a budget analyst 2, a budget analyst 3, myself, and I'm in the process now of hiring an assistant budget director or a senior budget manager. We haven't determined what that title is going to be, but there's definitely assistance needed in those areas as we go forward. We ran the budget office we needed more people this past year to do the work. So going forward, I've been given the instructions to hire another assistant director. In the purchase office, it's just a purchase contract clerk and a account clerk 1 who handles our PeopleSoft vouchering. Our office also works with the IT department in ongoing PeopleSoft implementation work and any problems that occur in the systems with departments. If we have to test new ways of doing things, our department handles that with IT. Other than that, I'll open it all up to questions that you have.
So Mary, did you say that 3 of these positions are not?
There's no money behind them.
Money behind them?
There's no money
but
behind them.
There will be money behind them.
No. There is no money behind them. We kept the positions and the names because of civil service. If we abolish those positions, we never get the title back. Or it's very difficult to get the title back.
Okay.
I was just curious in the professional services and the drop in 2008 fiscal year 18 there, the projected goes from 200 to 99.
Yes, one of our previous senior budget manager was transferred up to the IT department in November, so I've lost that position for almost 9 months of this year.
That would account for that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So then, can you go through are there 7 people assigned, or no?
There's 7 titles.
Yes. How many people?
So there's the director, myself,
Yep.
the assistant budget director, which the title is there. We are trying to hire. Haven't been successful yet.
Yep.
The budget analyst 3, the management analyst is vacant and unfunded. The budget analyst 2 is filled, and the information aide is unfunded and vacant, and the temporary services information aide is unfunded and vacant.
So the budget analyst 3 and the management analyst are not?
The budget analyst 3 is filled, and there's money behind it. It's just the management analyst, the information aide, both information aides on the full-time and the temporary services line, and the assistant budget director.
So I understand that, like, you know, a lot of the city has to, we've all got to figure out ways to do more with less is
Doing less with less.
do,
That's what I call it.
doing less with less. That's sometimes,
Doing less with less.
That's often the way it works out. But yeah, I mean, so you guys are supposed to have 7, but there's currently 3 of those or 4 of those that are not.
They're not filled.
They're not filled.
And 4 of which don't have any money behind them, but the assistant budget director, and on the 415 line, there's a position for a senior budget manager. The roles hopefully will be the same, and we're trying to fill it. We always have problems with civil service. There's no test out right now. It could take almost a year to do that. So if we did find someone, and I hope we do, with the city residency and the money that we've allocated for the position, we'd have to probably put them on SURA until, for a while.
So that's a big part of the challenge, filling those positions, is the civil service
Any
test
professional
and
services in the city, I think we see it with the law department, we see it with the engineering department and the budget department. You want, in someone in this position, you want someone with a heavy accounting background, public administration background, who's worked in public finance, and those are the challenges, is the salaries and the residency issues.
But the administration is aware of all this, and you're saying, so should we find those people, we're ready to
Should we find a person with those, yeah, we could hire.
be ready to roll. The problem is finding the people to fill those roles with the experience, with the residency, and with be willing to take the salary as it is.
The previous times we had vacancies in that position, we hired internally. One time, after going through an extensive search to find someone, the people just weren't there.
As a financially strapped city, one of the common recommendations you see is for long-term financial planning. So like 5-year budget cycles for everybody. How much more effort do you think that would take for Syracuse to be doing 5-year plans for everybody? Yeah, go ahead.
We do a multi-year plan. We do it in the summertime. Once the Office of Comptroller publishes his pension contribution payments or rates, we pull that together. It's an internal document that we work with. There's a lot of broad assumptions that are used in that report. You're going out 5 years, sometimes.
Does the report start with the current year's budget?
It starts with the current year's budget and goes forward.
If you had, what would be your wish list? If you had like if we had money to put in the budget department.
I mean, I'm happy as it is right now, as long as I can get an assistant, someone who could step in for me. And some days there's RFPs going on and other meetings going on and council sessions going on and committee meetings going on. I'd like some backup.
Yeah, and how long is the your assistant or deputy position been empty? You said.
Well, last year we had a senior budget manager working on some of this, but she had split her time with the IT department, and I needed someone to do. I had to take over all the bonding work. I had to take over all the pilot work, shelter rent work. There was a lot more put on my desk to do because I just didn't have the people to do it. So The last time there was a full assistant budget director was probably 2 years ago.
Okay. And where are we now in the search? Is there
I
any?
just put ads out, actually today.
Oh, I think I saw. Yeah, I think I saw
Yep,
that. Yeah.
I just put it out today, hoping to hire by July 1st.
Okay.
So if you know anybody, Joe,
Yeah.
send them my way.
I do have an extensive network. I'll put it out there. Anyone watching at home, put out the word too. So how are you? I mean, with this lack of resources, you still. I mean, how are you guys getting by?
I worked a ton of overtime. That's all I'll tell you. I worked a lot of hours to finish this up this year.
Not ideal. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Well, thank you.
Great. 15 minutes. Beat Dave Proack.